Alrighty, back at a daily trading recap for Tuesday, the 19th of October, 2021 here. Nice little $10 day in the green. Shoulda, coulda, woulda been a lot nicer of a trade. Only one trade on OLB for me today, but I'll take it as it's there. We'll break it down in a few seconds here. Let's get over housekeeping. First and foremost, though, spy a little nice update. Once again, 0.7% in the green. Just going even further of a slope to the upside than what it was doing originally. So we'll see if this is just going to be a lower high that's coming in. We potentially come back down to this little channel 430 to 440-ish range and maybe go from there. What it's kind of doing there, but interesting. That's a bit lower dollar volume, under 50 million shares traded today as of right now. We are 5 minutes after the close, so we'll see what it wants to do. Very interesting day out of that today too. I'm certainly not going to deny it. I'm still long, of course, very heavily, but just very interesting to see this price action always. Let's go over dollar volume around the markets horn. NASDAQ $160 billion volume, pretty substantially low. Nicely above that $200 billion volume mark, though, and OTC is coming in just under $3 billion at $2.8 billion volume. So putting in some nice little work there in the OTC markets. See if we can get some more action heating up out of those. Starting off, wanted to talk about, before I get into OLB, was watching ALYI out of the gate as one of my tickers of watch. This OTC former runner had a nice little move from yesterday with decent-ish little volume, maybe looking for second day potential. Didn't have the most awesome close, but it wasn't selling off hard, wasn't fading. No real amount of gap up, and it was just a huge ask once the market opened that just continued to take this thing. So it was like, all right, you're coming off the watch list. So tough to be watching that one out of the gate and then ended up failing, but whatever. Also looking at BTZI as another OTC mover. Had a very nice gap up today, continuing to move this 3-day run up we're in now. Less volume, looks like it could be, God, I wish I could there's some way to do this as this bottom volume chart as dollar volume instead of just share volume in a sense, because I think that could be a big factor in understanding, depicting a very different picture of what these stocks are actually doing at different price levels, of how much attention is actually coming to these in the way of dollar volume versus just shares traded, where these may be the exact same dollar volume traded, but it just looks different because they're at different price levels, right? But anyway, looking at this one out of the gates, just kind of like, wasn't the most awesome. Had a little bit of a sell-off from the open under VWAP, then it reclaims VWAP, and then it has this huge ask around 125. Then I'm thinking, oh, okay, shoot, it's, it probably won't get through there. Or if it does build up through there, starts chewing away, then I could see some strength coming out of it. Failed off a little bit within the next minute. And then it comes back to test it once again within the next minute candle. And it was just holding. And then I kind of looked away for 1 second, came back, and that 125 was gone. Didn't see really anything of it on the time and sales. Like it just had printed somewhere. So it's just like it had kind of vanished away, or somebody took it away. And then this thing was just free to continue on with a nice little percentage move, tapping 134 here, which would have been a very nice long trade from that 125 entry. Getting anywhere around there for continuation, but again, still continuing to try and chase these for the multi-day continuation out of the open. It just gets more and more tough, less probable. The more days we go out, the percentage moves that they can still go each and every single one of those times is tough on that too. So yeah, good non-trade, but rather be on the sidelines and just let it do what it wants to do. But the opportunity was certainly there. And interesting, where that 125 seller went would have been interesting to know. That is all I want to mention. Let's get into OLB now for the trade. Golly. It's just knife in the heart to see how far we're down and to see where my covers were. So green trade ended up $10 in the green after paying $8 in commission for the borrow fees. This is perfect little morning dumper. I also wanted to mention too, before we break it down specifically, EDSA. Similar thing. We're seeing a lot more of these just quick morning spikes off a news catalyst, or I forget what happened with the EDSA or what it is specifically, but the pattern is really what the huge focus is in it. Like OLB, it doesn't really matter what the sector is, what the float is. OLB is a super low floater. It's a 2.5 million low floater. So EDSA, same thing. You're getting confirmation of potential trade by the crack under VWAP as it's pulling back to the downside to show that, hey, more sellers are stepping in on this one. The trend has now reversed in a sense, a little bit slower as shown on the VWAP, especially for what the spike was, the initial green spike. But beautiful, even the pre-market just trading it, fading it, really can sit so comfortably this whole trade as a short. And it just obviously hit a little bottom here around that 8.2 mark where it hovered around for the rest of the day. But great to see that. WATT, another pre-market percentage mover, a little bit different, had kind of fake out initial 1 minute spike for this was right away from market open from whatever news catalyst, whatever pumped this thing. So you like fake out little move initially. This wasn't even, this is just beyond that 10% mark too, from 2 to 2.3. So it's just like, yeah, would I really have been motivated anyway, even if I was up at the open of pre-market to see this thing to try and get short there? It's just like, nah, but then it has another rise again, fails to ever really crack. VWAP again has a little fake out here, builds in with huge volume once again to new high of day. And you get that actual slow, gradual crack of VWAP that does actually retest to the upside of VWAP once again, but then ultimately fails, just continues to bleed and die away. Man, looking at this intraday, just awesome to see. Tries once again, market hours, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 times to test that VWAP, but just continues to get oversold, pushed more to the downside. Great sit as a short to be in this, as the confirmation of the trade would be where that rejection of VWAP break to the underside of VWAP would be. Man, percentage movement opportunity is certainly there. So back to OLB, similar type of thing. Didn't even really see any news catalyst for this one on my scans as it was happening live, and I don't really see anything news here. I didn't look that hard on Twitter to see if there was some reason for this pump. I just see some random Bitcoin sector kind of, it mentions the tickers names in these random ones, but nothing specific to this one. But again, like I mentioned, super low floater, pretty much immediate spike, closer-ish to market open. This is really the last train I would take to get an entry on this style of this morning dump trade, which is that 9 a.m. time frame, Eastern Standard Time frame. If that news catalyst is going to come out then and there, obviously other people are going to be potentially aware of that happening and then being able to play off of that too. Whereas when you get closer within that 15 minutes to the morning bell, it just gets a little funky with how it's going to react to that morning open and just all those different factors. So yeah, this 9 a.m. is really the last cutoff time for me too, if it's going to spike from there, to let it play out to the downside. So got this little fake out. You get the 2-minute perk to the upside with very nice continuation going into the first little sell-off candle or stoppage of the spike continuation at really the high of the peak, which I like to see too, versus what the other one yesterday was, or did it do it on Watt? Yeah, like just looking at this Watt candle, for instance, of how sometimes it can just get so widespreadish or just so choppy that you get these huge spikes. So the top of this candle is 2.8, but it really kind of having to get an entry around, like for example, this one didn't obviously work out. It's not a great example, but if this was to happen similar to this, it's like you're having to take an entry point for what I would consider the obvious failure of the trend continuation at around this like 235 mark, and then saying, well, am I going to risk high of day all the way to 2.8 just so I can potentially maybe get this thing back down to that $2 whole dollar mark? That is not a good risk reward. And obviously I go way more heavily on the win rate, the hit rate of these trades working out, more so than I do the risk reward on the individual trade itself, looking at the broader term spectrum of that. But yeah, just tough intra-trade, especially, okay, what do I do with my position size then on this one? Is this going to be one that works out? Most of the times these ones are the ones that end up working out, but then it's just like, if it does become one of those that ends up cutting at high of day, am I willing to risk that full high of day with a full position size for where that is? It's a huge loss. It's going to take out, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those previous winners that I traded on this specific pattern. But I'm just getting back into this morning dip. I have not, man, that'd be interesting to see where my last one was. Yeah, so it looks like my last one was actually on B-Big in the 7th or so that I kind of randomly did this one. And then the next ones after that were in the month of August. That trend was kind of fading out for that specific pattern. But yeah, I think we're seeing a few more of these come out to play once again, that you just get the news catalyst, whatever, to push it up in the pre-market, and then even in that pre-market and market hours especially too, just bleeding, dying, death the whole day too. So still that battle, even when I started doing this pattern, of this April for this year, of, man, am I trying to sit here and play this chart perfectly? Because I know, what's the probability of these things, which I think is very high. I haven't done the hard data on it, but the probability of these things that they do end up just having a day where they tank the whole morning and then end up doing this for the afternoon. So the afternoon session, really you're picking up scraps for dimes of trying to pick a bottom there, thinking if you're holding it for this long and you can say, okay, it's, it's getting close to power hour even still, which I certainly would not be willing to hold this thing short for. If, take the money when it's there, not when it's have to, which is kind of biases me for what I think this pattern or trade setup should be. But if the probability there comes out more and more like this OLB today too, it's going to be like, just disregard the price action. If it doesn't break your risk level of that high of day, like I should have done with this one, then just let it die, let it do its thing, and then you can come back at really any time frame and collect easy money here. This would have been, I can look back and say it would have been an awesome trade to the downside, but in all reality, for where I was at today, especially too, even if I did still risk that high of day, I know I would have been covering around that $6 whole dollar level, or that six, where 10% would have been around like 6.1-ish from my entry of 6.76. So yeah, I can look back today and say, oh, I can calculate it out of like at 5.4, I would have made this much on this trade, but I knew I wouldn't have been nailing this one perfectly, even if I had done that too. So that's just so negative and so backwards thinking for what this pattern should be too. But again, like I mentioned, taking the data in on this one, if this pattern does start to play out again and again, like it does on that EDSA, like it does on these OLBs, you don't have to pick and manage this and babysit it. If it breaks, set a stop. If it's going to risk that high of day, just let it do what it's going to do and keep that chart, in the corner of your eye, not looking so hard at the level 2 where time and sales are trying to read crazily into it, but just let it do what it's going to do. That's my type of pattern. My type of trade on these ones is I don't want to have to do anything on it. I just want to say, oh, okay, it's going to do this. Here we go. There's the entry. And then I can come back later in the day and say, oh, thank you for my money. I appreciate it. But man, so just going into this one specifically, not having traded these ones in a while, and especially this one not being a specific biotech sector stock, also just wanted to keep very lenient of it, very not just like hyper trigger finger ready on this one to cut it, but also understanding, hey, it's a super low floater. Daily's not the most awesome. It's in this little bit, it's not in a pure downtrend. It's kind of in this little cupish pattern back to the upside again too. So just stay cautious. It's putting in nice dollar volume today. Just be very lenient and pressing on, be more to the risk averse side, I would say, than the risk on type of mentality. But I took that 200 share size initially as that I thought it was the actual crack of VWAP. Nothing really harder indicating of me. I thought it was, level 2 was just breaking down. So I said, okay, I think the entry's here. And of course, get bottom filled at 6.76. I think my limit order was like 6.7. I thought it was just going to peel off hard. But it ended up, I get stupid fill. So it could have got, that's the trouble with these ones. I never get a good enough fill. Because like if I got a 6.9 fill, if I got a 6.8 high 6.8 fill, I kind of probably would have still been in this one as it pulled back to VWAP and just didn't break that entry point. And I probably still would have been in this one for the full 10% trade. But that's whatever. That's neither here nor there. But then still, as it was continuing putting these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red candles after my entry, after that failure back to the downside of VWAP, just wasn't moving as fast away from price as I wanted to, as I kind of remembered. So then I said, you know what, I don't feel as confident taking that big of a size, this one, for trying to play it all the way down. If it does somehow hold here at this level of 6.6 and then play around still more in this pre-market, and then, maybe it does crack at a little bit of a new high of day during market hours, and then just like not a hard green, true pure day at the end of the day looking back at it, but that it just, messes around, just manipulated emotional type of play on that day too. Just saving myself more on just, hey, take the profits as they're there. Just don't try to get funky with this one, especially that we haven't traded this pattern in a while, getting our feet wet again back in this one. So took off 50 shares for that first exit as it was down to 6.6 and kind of holding that level well. And I wrote 6.6 especially too, just watching that bid ask, that level 2. As soon as we would get down to this 6.5-ish area, it would get somehow immediately it would always go like back to 6.6, pretty much right after there. You'd be like, oh, okay, sweet, the bid's being shipped away here. We're seeing 6.49 on the bid, and then it was back to like 6.54, 6.57, 6.6. It was just like, well, okay, so that somebody's supporting it at least here. So that was obviously after my first exit, but just kind of easing myself a little bit more as I'm getting back into this pattern, not throwing a huge crazy size compared to what I've been doing in the recent past here. But then just as it's holding decently, once again, we get this again, it tries to break that 6.5, fails to fully break. More volume coming in here in the next few minutes, and I'm saying, okay, I think it's could get a little bit squirrely here. I'm not looking to try and be a hero on this one or hold through a new high of day, because I know it's a terrible, crappy company and going to die eventually. Just take the profits as they're there. Just take the safe cover. It's not a waste of a day trade, in my opinion, on this one. It's just learning experiences in all of these ones and setting me up far better for the future. I don't look at this as taking profits too soon, like the mentality of like, oh, you can never go broke taking profits, right? Because, even, the backside of that statement too, well, you're never going to become a millionaire by taking 1% on every single trade and calling yourself a great trader that way. But the mentality on this one was I think the strength coming in this one, it's not the most, I just don't feel the most A+ for the setups of what this morning dumper should be. It's not that American Biotech. It's a super low floater. It could also get a little bit squirrely here for how these ones have been holding a little bit more. Just didn't feel as confident in this one dying off as it did today. And forced to sit back and watch the what coulda, shoulda, woulda been money roll in on this one as it just died off the whole rest of the day too. But that's trading. That's a continual grind of this pattern. This one certainly is adding to the winnings, the win rate and the profits of this specific pattern for my trade review of what I'm going to review, continue to go back on, but certainly more to expand upon. Easily to see that there's certainly a lot more to expand upon, a lot more meat left on the bone for these types of things. Also, interesting note here of the difference in VWAP between my scans platform and then also Thinkorswim. So I'll just try to pull it up here if we can do a little side-by-side of how the VWAP was different. I don't know if it's if this will show most awesome on here. But you can see even in that first minute candle, very obvious difference that first minute candle shows that it tapped under VWAP actually there. And the second minute candle after that spike and the third minute candle were all under VWAP here on Thinkorswim. In scans shows that they weren't. So obviously when I'm doing my scans and I'm seeing these pop up, I immediately pull them on my scans platform. But this is a great point too, that I kind of have to pull them up on Thinkorswim as well to see if I'm basing that trade specifically off of the crack to the downside of VWAP to see, oh, okay, it's already testing VWAP there. It's it's not like here where you're thinking, okay, it's holding VWAP a little decently well. I could get ready for the next, for where would have been this candle here if I was watching this scans chart, watching this scans chart for that crack of VWAP to get an entry. I would have been a minute behind, probably getting a fill of a few less cents of down to potentially 6, 7, like 10 cents almost potentially that I would have had to take on that just by looking at a different platform. So great note and mention on that for me as well, to get as many perspectives on that as I can to and understand why those are just a little bit different. I'm obviously not frustrated that they're different by just so little minutia, but a good factor to keep in mind as well that those little indicators can differ between platforms. Yeah, I was a little bit of I also wrote a little bit of a fat finger exit for that final cut, as I was just it was getting closer to that my entry price of 7.6, and it was building on the bid, and I was getting ready, going through all the preparations to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. If I see the bid start doing here, blah 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 blah. I started to see those things play out, and then just kind of before I could even realize it, my finger was being pushed, and then I was already out. So I knew it's not like it was an accident, but it was, I wasn't fully 100% in it. I think I was just creating that image in my mind already so much that my body just carried it out for me to get the exit and save me a little bit for potentially what could have been more of a disaster. That was the plan going in. It wasn't like I was just creating that on the spot, but that's what it was there. Yep, that's all I wanted on that one. Let's go to just other tickers. The only trade on the day for me was that one. Just wanted to mention PUGE. Pretty nice little move right out of the gate there. I like the daily on this one. It's just in this nice little breakout from yesterday. Kind of had that little fake out slap attempt to the upside here on the daily. That shows it a heck of a lot more clear than the intraday was. Didn't close the most awesome, but obviously the gap up there. As the volume comes in to build this thing with strength, holds above VWAP decently. Great little percentage move right away in the first 3 minutes for that one. FNMA and FMCC, interesting moves on this one. I've been looking like crazy trying to find the specific news on it, and the only really potential thing I saw was they could be expanding eligibility for low-income earners to refinance their houses, which I don't think that's the actual news, but I think something to do with like the Supreme Court ruling maybe to do with that. But that's the one I'm going with for now, at least. Of both of them, FNMA and FMCC, kind of the same thing. Very strong close yesterday, and very nice open today. Yeah, that news catalyst kind of sounds a heck of a lot like a year that rhymes with schmoothouse and schmate to me if we're refinancing for low-income earners. But that's just me. I wasn't around in the stock market at that point too, and I really have no context to apply that to in the same light. But just trading the price action there right away in the morning. What a great example as well too of just there's just no volume the rest of the day on any of these. You get 10, 15 minutes maybe of action, and then it's kind of over for these OTCs and whatever representation you want to take out of that one. That was certainly a great reminder too. And of course, I had to mention that one for those types of actions on those and those former crazy runners as well. For my swings, still keeping OCGN for right now. Not looking the most awesome or most motivating, but I certainly don't think it's dead. Still got 10 shares around like 948ish. I think my entry is. If we start cracking this $8 level, I think I'm certainly looking to cut it. If it does want to come back at some point, potentially build up once again. I could be a player if I get stopped out at that $8 whole level. But and then naked as well. It looks like Tui is actually out of all his swings because he is just trying to focus once again on that day trading aspect of it. But then good to see that he also doesn't think the thesis for these trades is over still. So not like I'm basing, once again, like I said yesterday, not trying to base my trades off of him. I think I was actually in it before he was on these ones, and I still think it could have some potential nice ones. I'm going to have to sit a lot longer. This is very different than trading just solely intraday too, and that mindset having there, but expanding my horizons, continuing to open myself up as a trader too, I think it's very important for that. Watch list, just preliminary scans as of right now. Still going to watch NRXP going into tomorrow. Looking for these multi-day holds on volume, still holding decently well. That 10 whole dollar level, obviously a key psychological point that's been holding from previous day. Building a little bit with volume today too. A little bit of a sell-off here in the close, but if we're getting after hours to hold here, volume, especially to come in on this one, could be very nice going into tomorrow, the rest of this week. Looking for HX as well. This one is just that crazy, sketchy, low floater Chinese company that is just going up and up for some reason. I don't really have any hard trade thesis on this one as of now. I know Tuya was watching this one a while back, and I think I tried to trade this one long as well too on the same thesis. But it'll be a great little educational lesson for what happens on this one. It's not the most insane volume for what it's doing here, but very interesting for that. So then actually WTRH as well. Traded this one yesterday for that nice little move, but still holding decently. Again, same thesis of multi-day big dollar volume movers, big volume movers initially. They're just continuing to hold and stick around like PROGs. That had a little bit of a down day today, but could be some also short sale restricted, looks like. So it could be potentially nice once again tomorrow. MGTX also on potential watch for third day surge. Really didn't want it to push hard today. Wanted today to be more of a rest day. The volume certainly looked like it was gonna be that. In the morning session too, if it didn't have this perk to the upside of VWAP, didn't try for that new high of day off of the day yesterday. I think that third day could have been a lot more. Tomorrow could have been a lot more prudential. For a surge in that regard, but yeah, we'll see if it still has some legs going into tomorrow, even if potentially we exhausted a little bit of the longs that would have been looking at this one for a play from today. And then IO, also same thing, it's a little bit similar to that MGTX that, God, I wish it didn't have this little run up here into the close. It was like a nothingness day from yesterday. This was a pre-market mover from Monday. Had nice volume. Again, the volume today too, shoulda, coulda, would have been a little rest day, just a little nothingness. But again, it's breaking to a new high of day from that first day. And it's just like, okay, did you blow your steam off too soon? And could we have, capsized ourselves a little bit more, cooked in the crock pot a little bit just to explode for a better third day surge? Is there going to be any amount of opportunity tomorrow on these ones potentially for both sides of the equation, longs and shorts, to have a little battle for that third day? But I'm still on watch, maybe educational. It is an icy as well on this one, but 22 million float. So we'll keep it on watch. That is all I had. Again, I can't deny a nice day in the green. Perfect little, again, the same mentality of A rating mentally for me of what I'm focusing on, not going for that chasey style of trades. I don't think there's a heck of a lot more of opportunities similar to what I was doing in the summer months that I was just kind of going crazy or just stupid chasey with those style of trades, but hammering a lot more on the substance of the trade, focusing on what feels best for me and my personality as a trader too. So I think we're making a heck of a lot of strides in the correct direction that way. So I thank you guys for watching. We will catch you guys on the next one.